Welcome to Oregon Hot Rod! Welcome to the Oregon Hot Rod Experience, where we're going to share information with you. We're going to show you our successes and our failures, our mistakes and our solutions. We'll go on adventures, we're going to build cars, we'll do shop projects, and we'll do a whole bunch more. But most of all, we're going to entertain you with reality and stupidity. So subscribe now and continue to watch the Oregon Hot Rod Experience.
Hey, welcome again to another video from Oregon Hot Rod. My name's Zach, I'll be your host. So what we're doing today, we're going to be building a roof rack for our Gambler 500 Jetta. We're going to be taking these old store shelves that we had laying around. We're going to be cutting them up, we're going to be raising them up, we're going to be welding it back together. We're going to be making a cool roof rack for our Jetta. Then we're going to add some wood slats across it, we'll paint it. We're going to make this thing look awesome. I'm going to show you guys everything we're going to do here. Look out. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this thing into 4 sections. I'm going to cut the tops off of here like we got here. I'm going to cut this off here so that we have 4 easy pieces that I can then measure out into 12-inch sections and we can make our high-rise pieces. So one important tip when you're using a Sawzall and you're cutting metal, don't forget a bimetallic blade. If you can see right there, the teeth on this blade are super tiny, they're super short. That's what you know is a good metal blade. That way you can get a good bite in the metal and it's not these huge giant wood cutting teeth that will just rip metal to shreds and it won't get you anywhere. So make sure you got a nice, really thin metal cutting blade. It'll make a big difference. Alright, so we got our pieces here, 4 pieces. We're going to cut these into 8 12-inch sections. That way we have our stanchions to be able to raise this thing up. So now ideally we would have a chop saw or a bandsaw to cut these pieces down so that way we get a really nice even flush cut. But in order to avoid that, because we can't dig out the bandsaw right now, it's buried away, we're going to cut these things with the Sawzall. They're going to be fairly uneven, and then we're going to take a grinder and we're going to flatten them out flush so that way our rack will sit nice and even. So we'll go through that process, we'll cut these things up, and we'll bring you back in a second to show you what we're going to do with the grinder. Alright, got our 8 pieces. We're going to get these things jigged up so we can flatten out the ends of them, make sure that they're going to be right. Got to remove a burr off of this one and get these things ready to weld up. It's going to take us no time. Alright, so we got these things all clamped up. What we're going to do is we're going to take, as you can see, the edges are not very flush right now on either side. So we're going to take these things, we're going to square them off, put a line down this side, and then we're going to take a grinder and we're going to grind these things flush so that way when we jig this thing up it's going to sit nice and flat. And we're also going to take care of that little spot that's left over from cutting that thing down. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Alright, so before we weld this thing together, we've got all our pieces cut, we've got our magnets here. First thing you got to do, you got to clean up your weld surface areas. So we're going to take this grinder, we're going to clean up all the areas where we're going to be welding on both sides of the top and the bottom rack. And we're going to clean up the paint around the outside edges of these so that way they will weld nice and easy. So alright, so what we're going to do real quick, we're going to tack these uprights on here so that way we have a nice base to put the top piece on. So the big thing is you want to make sure that you have your surfaces all ground clean. You want all the paint removed, all the rust removed, so that way you get a nice clean weld. Next thing you can see, we have these squaring clamps here, and these will make sure that each of the corners are square when we weld them up. That way the thing's not wobbly or tipped over to one side or the other side. Next thing, you want to make sure with your welder you have a nice ground. So we have the area right here clean. It's ground off as well, so that way the welder makes a nice contact. You're going to want to turn on the gas. We're going to make sure that this thing's plugged in, and we're going to keep going. Alright, so one quick tip for you guys. One thing to keep an eye out for is welder maintenance. So if you can see the little tip on this thing right here, it's got a lot of slag buildup around the outside, and that's going to affect your shielding gas. So what you want to do is just check that thing, make sure there's not a lot of slag. And I don't have a pair of welpers, so I'm just going to use a screwdriver here, and we're going to clean this thing out, get all this slag off the outside. And the slag may seem like it's stuck, but it's not, because the tip is actually copper and the slag won't stick to it. It may just rest on there, but as you can see now, with just a little bit of scraping, we have a nice clean weld tip that's going to affect our weld a whole lot better. It's going to allow the shielding gas to come down and pour over the top of the weld and keep a nice clean weld. So a little bit of welder maintenance tip for you. Thank you. Alright, so we're going to take this wire wheel, we're going to clean off the outside edges of this thing. So as you can see on the outside edges, these have a C-channel. They actually have small little tack welds that hold them together. So if I clean those outside off with the flap wheel, I'm liable to separate some of the welds. So I'm going to use the wire wheel on the outside to clean up the metal, and then I'll use the flap wheel on the flat surfaces, which will clean it off a lot faster. The wire wheel takes a little bit longer, but it's not going to damage these welds on the outside. So we use that for the outside, flap wheel for the top. All right, we got the rack all welded, all ground down, ready for some paint. Look at some of those terrible welds. Oh yeah. But we got this thing ready. We're gonna flip this thing over, start cleaning it up, and get ready to shoot it with a coat of paint. All right, we're gonna put a quick coat of primer on this thing, give it a nice little coat, then we're gonna paint the outside of it with our final color. Alright, we got some SEM factory pack Olympic white. We're going to paint this thing. These things are sweet too because they have this awesome adjustable spray nozzle so you can point them in a vertical pattern. Professional stuff. Alright guys, we're going to take this thing and baja it around the backyard, see what it does. Might need to make a little clearance. Yeah, she rocks.
So while we're waiting for the paint to dry, we're getting the rest of the car ready. We add this awesome snorkel using just PVC pipe, plumbing PVC, and we drill into the air box and just make it a completely functional snorkel. We're also adding on our paint scheme, we're putting in the panels, we're adding in our logos and our sponsors' names and stuff such as that. Getting the car ready to head out. So in our next video, what you'll see us finishing up the car. You'll see us getting loaded up and headed out to the Gambler, and you'll get to see all the excitement that we have at Gambler. You'll see people doing hill climbing, going over the roads, checking out the beauty of it all, and all the dust. Anyway, stay tuned and keep watching.
Say hi.
Say hi, everybody.
Say hi, everybody. Say
Anyway, keep watching, learn a couple of things, watch us tear some shit up, or stuff up, excuse me, and
smash that like button and subscribe now.
yeah, subscribe now.
LikeOregonHotRod.com.
And for years,
Bitch.
know what had happened because they still